Hey everyone, it's Chris here from Lords of War with a Tuesday, Monday almanac. We're a little late on this one. We're going to cover Magic today. It looks like there's a lot of stuff to talk about. Very different from anyone who has played previous editions of Warhammer. It is a very blended rules set. Lots of changes to, I would say, probably the way that Magic's been done since I remember buying like Magic in a separate box set expansion was really when they branched out with Magic in Warhammer. And Magic used to be a sort of phase to its own where you'd have like a pool of dice, and your wizards would, if it was your turn, you'd pick up as many dice as you want, up to 6 to try to attempt to cast a spell, and your opponent would counter with whatever dispel dice. They would usually have a smaller pool left over to cast with, and you'd add your wizard levels together, and people really liked it because it was this sort of back and forth thing, and you were kind of managing a little bit of a resource. So it's not like that. They kind of spilled the beans on that before. So let's get into it. What does it look like? So they've talked a lot about the setting in this game and how it's going to be in the past. So we have a brand new setting here. This is like hundreds of years before the setting we were used to playing, and the Empire has not really settled. The colleges of Magic have apparently not settled properly yet, and so there's no like sort of like universalization to like how Magic is handled. So it sounds like the Magic's a lot more raw. So you have 8 lores still in the rulebook, but they're kind of a little bit more all over the place. And it does sound like a few of these are returning ones with just like different names. So you have Battle Magic, Dark and High Magic. Those are 2 different lores. Demonology, Elementalism, Illusion, Necromancy, and Law Magic. A couple of those are not surprising. I imagine Necromancy is probably a thing Tomb Kings will be using, and Law Magic obviously will be for the Greenskins. So you can tell like things like Illusion, maybe it's just a new name for Shadow Magic. Demonology, is that maybe just like Chaosy Magic? We'll see. Elementalism sounds like beasts a little bit, right? So there could be just like renaming of some of these old classics, and some of these could be bundled sort of lores from what we're used to seeing. So they alluded to wizards being able to pick from usually about 2, maybe 3 lores. And they did mention that you might be able to pick your lore at the start of the battle. So it's unclear, obviously, whether that means included in your list, because sometimes games say start of the battle, they really mean put it in your army list. It would be really cool, though, if you had that choice at the start of the battle to kind of pick and choose which lore you're going to use. I remember that was always a problem with like lores like Lore of Metal, where you're like, I want to take Lore of Metal Wizard, it's cool, but there's just some matchups where it's terrible because my opponent has no armor, like Beastman or something like that, or Empire. Empire would actually still be good. But if you can sort of like adjust on the fly, I think that's kind of cool. I mean, it makes sense. Your wizard should be able to kind of like, channel themselves into the sort of way they want to be. So we'll wait and see on that one. So they broke down the types of spells and sort of like the categories they're going to broadly fall into. So you have 6 categories. So what we're seeing this with the game is there is like a massive attempt to sort of make everything sort of have a very rigid structure, give detailed names to things, have categories, and sort of like universalize the game in a way that should make it very referenceable and very easy to look things up, which for typically a pretty heavy game like Fantasy's always been, and it sounds like it's going to be still, it will be nice because you're going to spend a lot of time looking things up and checking your book and stuff like that. So the 6 categories are enchantments, hexes. Those are going to act very similarly but in opposing ways. So enchantments buff your models, hexes debuff your opponent's models, and that happens in the strategy phase. You're going to cast those at the beginning of the turn. Conveyance is movement adjusting spells, so like maybe whether it's like giving benefits to your movement on your guys or just straight out teleporting them. That'll happen in the movement phase. Magic missiles and magical vortexes, those will happen in the shooting phase. Magic missiles typically from years past, we're talking about like fireballs, Shem's Burning Gaze, that sorts of like, you're literally blasting your opponent with like a little missile, and it does 2d6, 1d6, something amount of hits at a certain strength. Magical vortexes are nightmare fuel. They are usually big, nasty things that just erase units. At least they used to. We'll see if they actually go for that again in this edition of Warhammer. They haven't shown any off yet. We'll see if there's game-ending spells. I have a feeling, just based on what I'm seeing in the game, is they're probably going to measure that back a little bit based on what I'm seeing in terms of like break testing, and it seems like they're taking away a lot of the black and white sort of parts of the game where something just could kind of die really quickly, and replacing it with a bit of a nuanced system, which I kind of like. I think that's going to make for more interesting games. And assailment is another category, and that happens in the combat phase. It sounds like, and we got a couple previews of these, it sounds like they're going to be like basically like almost like magic missiles in combat. You kind of just do damage to units while you're in the combat phase with your wizard, which is almost like it's their way of dealing damage in combat, because the wizards, unless you're like a vampire lord, wizards suck in combat. That's like historically been their thing. So how do you actually cast spells? They've finally revealed, and like I said, this is very different than previous Warhammer, and they've gone and said that they wanted it to be quick and clean, and I think they've actually achieved that. So the way it's going to work is, and they didn't actually say how many spells your wizard can cast, but they did say if for every level that the wizard is, so like level 1, 2, 3, 4, they'll know an extra spell. So it sounds like you're going to roll into those lores. So like you pick a lore at the beginning of the game, you're going to roll into that lore, very much how you used to do it in previous editions, which is cool. So obviously taking a higher level wizard is good because you have access to more spells. And it does sound like you're going to be able to attempt to cast all of them. So if you have 4 spells with level 4, it sounds like as long as you're in range and you have all sort of the prerequisition things the spell requires, you'll be able to attempt to cast it. So how are you going to do it? You're going to roll 2d6 and you're going to add your wizard level. It's literally that simple. And they have miscasting, and they have what they call it, perfect invocation, which is the new name for irresistible force, which means for those that didn't play before, perfect invocation or an irresistible force is a spell that cannot be dispelled. So if you roll double 6s, you got it. If you roll double 1s, however, you will be rolling on the miscast table just like old times. Excuse me. And it's actually a lot more forgiving than previous editions. A lot like the other things I was talking about is they've toned back a lot of the feel bad stuff. Don't get me wrong, it's not good things on the miscast table, but it's not like, oh, I rolled double 1s, okay, I roll on the chart, and I lost my wizard with a roll, and now my army crumbles or something horrible like that. That's gone. So at the worst you're going to take is a strength 10 hit on a big template, which is really bad still if they're in a unit. Like I said, they're still bad results, but most of the other ones are like lower strength hits, or your spell goes off, but it's weak and you can't cast again. Or actually on the miscast table, you can cast a spell that goes off with perfect invocation, but then you're done casting. So there's actually kind of a good result on there still, which is kind of interesting. So the miscast table is fun. You actually can also, it sounds like you can miscast on a dispel roll. So you'll roll your 2d6 when you're casting, add your wizard level. If your opponent's in range, so lower level wizards will have a range of 18, higher level wizards will have a range of 24. If they're in range, they can attempt to dispel. They'll roll their 2d6 and add their wizard level. It's literally just a duel of wizards, so that's kind of cool. And it sounds like the dispelling wizard can also roll a miscast or an irresistible stop, which is kind of cool. So you're literally playing with the winds of magic, and if you're attempting to dispel something, you can also damage your unit and get hurt. So it's going to make dispelling like you're really going to think about it, because maybe you roll the wrong dice at the wrong time and you blow your own unit up. So magic is fickle, and they've kept that feel in the game. So they've given us a profile preview of the Handmaiden for the Bretonnian army, which is kind of cool. And right off the bat, I noticed a couple of interesting things. Not necessarily to do with the magic phase, just interesting things that they kind of haven't spoiled yet in any of their articles. So one of them was base sizes in the characteristic profile. I really like that. So it's going to be really easy first glance to look at a character profile and know what base size they're going on. And I think that they've intentionally done that because they know a lot of people that are going to be playing this game and getting back into this game are going to be having to rebase models or base new models, etc., whatever it's going to be. So that's cool. I like to see that. Mounts add wounds to your profile. Yay! I'm so happy. They added this, I believe, in 8th edition in the end times, but this is something that I absolutely dreaded about previous editions of Warhammer, which is every time you took a mount for a hero or a lord, it always felt kind of bad, because let's go to the craziest example, Chaos Lord Dragon, Wood Elf Lord Dragon, whatever, on Dragon, your coolest guy, your coolest female character, whatever it is, should be a badass. Nope. When you're rolling to attack that model, they're two separate models. So you had these feel bad moments where either the dragon got shot out from underneath the character or the hero on top got sniped out and you have a crazy dragon running around. I get it. It was kind of, it made sense in a way, but the combined profile thing that they've done in AOS and 40K since then, and in End Times where they just added the stats. So like if you're a 3 or 4 wound hero and you get a 6 wound, now you're 10 wounds or whatever. It just feels better because that's one model running around and you kind of want it to be alive or dead, basically. I like that better. So it's glad to see that. And even taking like, a little unicorn or a horse is hopefully going to give you an extra wound. I think that's cool. So another cool thing that I kind of saw in the article, which is neat, is it looks like heroes are going to really like power up the units they're in. I think this is going to be a big part of 8th edition. Sorry, 8th edition. Oh my gosh. A big part of the old world. Because previously you would put heroes in units and sort of the strategy or the thinking was, I've got a spellcaster, I'm going to chuck them in a cheap unit in the back, like archers or something like that, just so they're out of the way, but they can still chuck spells and stuff like that. And then they're not a liability to the unit they're in. And then your lord would go in like the fightiest unit you had or whatever, and your BSB. And that's kind of the heroes you took. There wasn't a lot of incentive to take additional heroes beyond that. Maybe you would have like a really specific dispel scroll caddy with a wizard, or a level 1 wizard that had a lore that you thought was like techie in a particular type of situation. So the neat thing now is it looks like the universal special rules that your hero has, like things like magic resistance, magical attacks, whatever it may be that they have in their profile, it looks like it's going to pass that on to the unit they're in, which is really neat. So they're going to buff the unit well beyond just the fact that they're there and maybe they fight. So putting a wizard in a fighting unit might make a lot more sense now, provided that you can protect them the right way. And they also kind of hinted at some of the, basically saying like, there's going to be a lot of casting, but don't worry, the ranges have been reduced on everything. So it sounds like stuff's going to be shorter range. So there's going to be a bit more incentive also kind of on putting your wizards a bit more forefront in the game. Because if ranges are shorter, you're going to need to position them appropriately so you can actually cast spells that are going to matter. So I kind of like that. Having your heroes more involved, more engaged in the game, I think that's going to make for more interesting battles. And I like the fact that there may be more incentives to take more sort of like minor support heroes and kind of sprinkle them in units across the battle. And we're really starting to take shape, like see how important those heroes are going to be in those units, especially when we talked previously in videos about the leadership stat and how important leadership is going to be for sticking around in combat and not getting just rolled over and passing things like fear and stuff. So heroes are going to be super important. I think people are going to take a lot more than we've previously seen in additions to the game, which I think is awesome because Warhammer has always been about the heroes, I think, and that's awesome. Big ranks of infantry and powerful heroes in those units. What do you guys think about the new Magic phase? Does it sound cool? Do you like the changes? Do you think going for something that's a little quicker and leaner is a better choice on Games Workshop's part? Or are you going to miss the old dice pool, cards, whatever versions that we've been used to before? Give me a comment in the comments section about what you think, and I'll try to respond. If you haven't already, please hit like, subscribe, so that helps us get our numbers up, and we'll hopefully have a new update for you next week. Until then, take care, guys. Cheers.